Bella from Self-Publishing School. In this video, I'm going to talk all about book covers and designs for fiction and nonfiction books. Foremost, people do judge books by their covers. No matter how long we've been told not to do this, people always do. It's just the way people are. So instead of fighting against that, we're gonna go with that and understand what people want in a good book cover and how we can position that online in order to sell more books. Because the second thing that you should know is that a good selling book cover is much different than a good looking book cover. This is what we tell our students all the time. There's a fine line between balancing what a good book cover looks like aesthetically or what you like, and then balancing what is expected in the genre, what people are drawn to for that genre. And so we'll get into a little bit of that today. I'll go through a couple of different screen shares and teach you the different elements and stuff you want to pay attention to for book cover design for fiction and nonfiction, especially if you're a self-published author and you are the one dictating your book cover design. Before we get into the nonfiction, which is where we're going to start, I will be creating a video where I am auditing and giving feedback to real self-published authors' book covers and showing them what they can improve and from their genre specifically, including all of these tips in another video. I will link that when it becomes available. So first, starting with nonfiction books. Now, some people think nonfiction books are a little easier when it comes to book cover design, but the truth is that nonfiction books have such a wide variety of genres and different expectations for what the cover should look like. So number one to have in your nonfiction book cover is that the design should be clean and the title should be easy to read. Both the main title and the subtitle of your book should be very easy to read from afar. Remember, where are people looking at these books on? Where are they finding them? On Amazon. Either on their computer, on their tablet, or on their phone. Now those are very small screens, especially if it's on a phone. Remember that they have to be able to read the title from the cover in just a little thumbnail on the website. So keep that in mind. So number two, as I mentioned, is to make sure your book cover is what is expected. So not only should the design and at least the titles be really clear and easy to read from afar, but the design should also be based on what is expected in your genre. And that really starts with understanding who you're writing to, who is your avatar, who is your main audience, because that's going to dictate what categories and keywords you choose for your book and where it shows up on Amazon. So that's why really defining your audience and who you're writing to is the number one thing we teach authors at Self-Publishing School, because that's going to dictate really how well your book sells, because everything follows who you're writing your book to. And so if that's an example of what we're looking at, if we were to go into a specific genre, we're going to take a look at what books are selling well for that genre. And that's going to be the genre you're writing in, the categories that you're going to be choosing. We're going to dig a little deeper, do some research. What is an expected cover design in this genre? And you want to make sure yours is complying with those. So step number three is taking that same thing, but making sure it stands out in your genre. So that might be a little confusing, but this is what I mean when I say there is a line between expectation versus making it unique and stand out. That is up to you and your cover designer to go back and forth and decide. So if there are some general colors or certain types of font that are used in your genre more commonly, how can you do what's expected but also do something in a way that makes it stand out? What are the common colors, and can you do something a little bit differently? Can you do a different color? Can you do a different type of font? What design elements are there? Can you do something similar but maybe in a new way? So riding that line between what is expected, what is doing well, and how you can make that stand out. So let's do a little bit of an example of this right now. Okay, so let's take a look at how you can start to drill down in your category and find book covers that are similar, but also ways in which you can stand out. So I'm going to go ahead and just start from the top, and I'm going to go to just the books page on Amazon, which if you're on your phone, you can find that just in the menu, but here I choose this and then click enter without putting anything in the search field. And so I'll go down to this side and I'll find the category that my book is in. So let's say I am writing a book about, let's do it in the health industry, health and fitness. And specifically, let's talk about women's health We have a lot of women that come in writing about health. Let's go back down to women's health, and we're going to dive in. And so there's a lot of different ones listed here. Find one that is best for your genre. So let's say this is going to be, well, there are a lot of women-specific ones. Let's just do general. So you just want women to be as healthy as they can be. So because health is a little bit wide, so we're going to find books that are like yours. And let's see, but the first thing that I notice about the covers specifically for women's health is that there are not a lot of real people on these covers. There are pictures, illustrations, representative pictures of what is in your book. So ice cream here. This one is just all about burnout, which you can see over and over again. So from a start, what I notice is, there's not very many actual women on the covers. Now this might be for a reason. So there's one over here you can see, and that's one out of a lot. Otherwise, we don't see a whole lot of real people on the covers. So that's what I would take note of first and see, okay, how can I stand out? And then next, let's look at the different colors in the genre and see what all is there. So there is a little bit of pink. Pink and purple seem to be pretty primary colors that are used frequently. So what I would ask is, how can I do something that is similar to having, a big title that takes up a lot of the page, but also have an illustration, but also have a color that's not quite represented here? What colors stand out? So this green one stands out to me, even though it's just part of it. So maybe green is something that could stand out because there is a lot of other tones. This blue one stood out to me because it's not like the others. So that's how you would do this for this genre specifically. So let's try to find one more example of how this can work. So I'm going to go to books again, go to the homepage of books, and I'm going to go through to a different category for nonfiction books. And I'll do some fiction examples that you will see as well. But first things first, let's take a look at business books. So business and money. Let's drill down to get pretty specific. I am writing a book that is in the finance industry of business. Okay, so let's see, there's even more. So can I drill down even more? Oh my gosh, skip the flip, financial engineering. That's a student of ours. That's so cool to see. I'm taking a screenshot so I can share that with the team because that is so cool. Hayden's book is doing amazing. So what I'm gonna drill down into is, what are the other things I can go to? Wealth management, corporate finance. Let's go into, let's do wealth management. I'm reading a wealth management book about my experiences. I think off the bat right now we can see that there are some commonalities. So they're pretty not colorful, definitely not colorful books. There's only one I see here with an actual person on the front. But otherwise we see neutral tones. The title is clear and we're having clear illustrations. So with this genre, we're not getting super clever. We're not going above and beyond to do anything that is crazy. We want something that's very clear. So let's continue to scroll down and see there's Hayden's book again. What is in these categories? Let's go to bestsellers in wealth management. These are the ones that are doing well. And I will say this stands out to me quite a bit because it is different. It has a person on the cover. It also has some profanity, which is very different than what you're seeing here. It stands out a lot against this one and these other ones here. So that would take note of. But otherwise, for the most part, so skip the flip, this stands out to me. And maybe this is part of why Hayden's book is doing so well, is that how many other red books do you see in this category? He's got the only one, and that stands out pretty significantly. It's not necessarily that the title is interesting, but if somebody is scrolling through these books, they're most likely to pause and read this one as opposed to this one that looks like this one, that has a little bit that looks like this one. So that's another example of how you can use and combine those different elements of which color is not present. There's not a whole lot of bright yellow books in this industry. So I would say, how could I have a bright yellow book but have some of the simplicity that I see is working really well. Having the simple illustrations with a simple title, but using the color that stands out. So that's an example of how to find what covers are currently in your genre, in your category, and also how to merge what's working with something more unique that will stand out so you can help educate your book cover designer. So number 4 for your nonfiction book is to use clever sparingly and always default to clear. Now, I mentioned this earlier when I talked about the title specifically and subtitle, but what we always want to remember is that clear is better than clever, especially if clever is confusing. So remember that. You can do clever if it is also clear. And in fact, if you can make something make sense, and so when we say clear, people shouldn't have to think too much about it. They shouldn't have to figure out what you're trying to say or what image you're trying to create with your design. It should be very clear. But merging that clear with clever is going to be your golden spot. And so here's a couple examples of what clear and clever looks like on some books. Okay, so let's go through some examples of what a book cover can look like if it's clear and clever, but you're not doing too much on the clever. So this is a very simple book cover that doesn't have a whole lot going on, but what is clever about it is that you're giving a message about what the book's about within the design. So we have these grayed letters and white letters. The title is Your Life Matters. But really what's highlighted here is you matter. So that's an example of how it's clever, but also really clear, and it's not trying to do too much. Here's another book cover, Drowning in Potential, How American Society Can Survive Digital Technology. And what's kind of clever about this is we have this robotic arm with a phone here to represent the digital age, and we just have a life raft that looks like it's barely dipping in as if this screen was water, which goes with the drowning in potential. So that's a combination of clear and clever, where the clever is admirable and not confusing and not taking away from what the book is actually about, but more so clarifying further. So this book cover is really simple and I think powerful in a way that you can see here that it's about potential. So the power of not yet. And here we have a door that has something very beautiful on the outside, as if there is something beyond what we can see, and just more so represents more of what the book's about. So a common theme between these clever and clear is that if you can do clever in a way that is furthering the clarification of what your book's about, that's when the clever, you've nailed it, instead of it being confusing. So another book cover that I personally really like, Stop Gambling on Leadership, How to Transform Yourself into a Respected and Effective Leader. What I think is really clever is just the idea of playing on gambling with having this card outline and L for leadership here with the hearts. And so that's another example of where you've been clever while tying in that gambling aspect of the title while still remaining very clear of what the book is about. And the last tip we have for your nonfiction book specifically is to remember that your audiobook is going to be a different size. It's going to be a square instead of a rectangle. If you're hiring a legitimate book cover designer, then they will already know that this is a different size and they'll accommodate that for you if you have an audiobook that you're selling. So now let's get into fiction book cover designs, because I will be the first to say that the rules are pretty much the same but super different, in that fiction books are very, very different than nonfiction books by way of their design. You don't see a whole lot of nonfiction books with super intricate art and backgrounds and environments for their main character on the cover. So this is where fiction and nonfiction differ, but a lot of the rules are similar. So number one, as before, your cover is dependent on your genre. Now, this is very hard for so many fiction people to hear, especially because when it comes to our book, it's something that we've had in our head for so long. There's like this romanticization around what your book cover is and what it does. You've been dreaming of it. But the thing is, your book cover has to be something that will sell in your genre, unless you don't care about it selling. Then you can do whatever cover you want. But oftentimes, what the writer and what the author wants more for their cover may not be what the genre needs in order to sell. And so I want you to sit with that, feel the hurt if it hurts, and just know that there's a reason for it. So Finding what you actually love in a cover, you may be able to bring to life with the genre expectations. So number one, you have to understand who your audience is. And not just that, what is the age range you're writing to? What is the genre? And what are some of the subgenres as well? So an epic fantasy novel is not going to have the same cover as an urban fantasy novel, even though they're both categorized under fantasy. So keep that in mind when you're doing your research. And in fact, look up authors that you are writing similar books to. I know your book is unique. Every fiction book is unique. But if you're writing an urban fantasy, so a fantasy that takes place in the modern world with all the technology and stuff, and even in the real world instead of a secondary world, what are some other authors who are doing really well selling urban fantasy books, and what do their covers look like? More often than not, you will find a common thread amongst these. And even go ahead and open your Kindle or go to your bookshelf and take a look at the book covers for book genres that you really like. There are likely a lot of similarities. And so the number one thing that I see most often, because I read a lot of fantasy, is having a singular character, the main character in the middle, surrounded by the elements of the story. And this is where nonfiction and fiction diverge a little bit in the cover design, meaning with a fiction book, you want to also think about the artwork as something that is drawing the eye, not just the title. In fact, the title, if it serves the design and the art design, can be a little more difficult to read, only if it serves the design, whereas the design is the eye-catching element for a fiction book. And so tip number 2 is that you want the title to be discernible. You want it to be readable online, but you want to make sure that it is within the design so that the actual pictures, the artwork of your fiction book cover goes well with it and catches the eye of the reader specifically. Tip number 3 is to have a readable font. I think a lot of fiction people, what I see is they try to do this super unique, curvy, interesting, cryptic type of font, but if they can't actually read the title or it's too hard to read, that can cause a problem. So if you're wanting to get a little bit unique with a font, just at least make sure it's readable enough or that some letters aren't confusing or you're mix matching them. I've seen many memes where people chose the wrong font for their book cover and it made a very laughable title. Tip number 4 is if you are somebody who is writing a series, you want your cover, preferably your book cover designer, to be the same for all of them because you want to have a common thread between all of your book series. And so if you were to look this up, again, I'm going to use fantasy fiction as an example because this is a really strong example of these types of book covers. So here's an example of fantasy book cover design for a series. So right now we have the 2 main characters and we have some elements, different symbols. There's purple, there's a full moon, there's wolves. You can see all of the different elements there. And if I go down to the series, we have the next books look extremely similar. So if I zoom in on that, these next books all kind of share the same theme. So let's do another example just to show how prevalent and common this is. Let's do Moon Tortured, this series, and now we see the same thing. So this is book 1. These are the next books in the series. And you can see right here that these are all the same type, similar covers, but just slightly different so you know it is a different book. Let's do another one. This could be one as well. Book 1. It looks like there's 2 books, but see, these are different colors, but we have the same title, Alpha's Something, 2 main characters, slightly different coloring to them in there. So that is how you can see if books are in the same series or how you can set up your book covers for your series. So you have these similarities within them, the same type of color structures, the same main character, that sort of thing. And then the last tip for fiction books is, again, the audiobook will have a different dimensions. Your book cover designer should know that. If they don't, you are probably hiring a graphic artist and not a book cover designer, which are very different things. So much so that our authors here at Self-Publishing School ran into so many problems. We just decided to start doing our authors' book covers for them and with them, of course, with some of their recommendations. So that is something we now offer at Self-Publishing School because getting this right is so important. And it is so difficult to do, especially with so many people out there claiming that they're a designer, when really you have to have an education and a background in book cover design specifically if you want your book cover to actually sell well on Amazon. So those are the tips for book cover design for both fiction and nonfiction books. Now I will have a video coming up where I am going to give feedback on real authors' self-published book cover designs to help them understand how they can be stronger, how they can be better, or if they're crushing it already. So subscribe to this channel if you want a notification of when that video comes out, as well as get your book cover design checklist that is linked in the description below. We have put together a checklist so you can know for fiction or nonfiction, does my book cover that I'm getting check all of these boxes? Am I able to search through these types of genres? And a little bit of a worksheet that'll take you through these steps. So even if you do go it alone and hire a book cover designer, you know how to direct them to best make a cover that will help your book sell. So again, click the subscribe button and comment down below if you have any questions about book cover design, something that is specific to your book cover. Let us know down below. We might answer them there. We might just make another video with all of your questions. Until next time, I hope you have a great day.